to the Artist Talk for Menagerie, a two-person show with the work of Rachel Kalman and Grace Weston. Both are Portland-based artists, and we are really excited to celebrate their work here. Among their many accomplishments, I would like to make sure to add that Rachel's work has been supported by the Sika Art Award.
You go ahead. You're the guest.
Okay. Well, first of all, Kate, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for coming. Your faces, which is always a nice thing for any artist at a talk. Let's see. Well, my series is called Reclaiming the Muse. And to be honest, it was inspired way back when I was in my art history class in junior college, and I had the Jansen's history book with one female artist in it, Mary Cassatt, and I asked my professor, where were the women? Why weren't there more women artists? And he said to me, and this was a long time ago, hopefully this doesn't happen anymore, but he said, women have babies and they're not disciplined enough. And so that was something I internalized for a while and kept wondering about that. Well, now all these years later, I've been reading a lot of books about women in art from the beginning, from the time art was ever made, including some of the handprints on the cave walls they say were female. So we've been there. And in certain periods allowed to be recognized and shown and then pushed down again, and then the names disappear. So a lot of the reading I'm doing is about women artists. So as you probably will have seen, here that some of these pieces literally recreate a painting, restage a painting with centering the woman instead of the male. Switching roles or whatever, and some are, rather than referencing literally the painting, they're referencing the story, like Judy and Holofernes, which is a biblical story. Judith and Holofernes, he was a general who was invading a village, and Judith beheaded him. It's a longer story than that. But the famous image of that is, the most famous, or my favorite anyway, is Gentileschi's painting, which is very vivid in the act. And my Judy is just sort of savoring the moment afterwards. But I think what I'll address first is this image, because I was always crazy about the Andre Cartege image from the 20s. He shot that in his studio, or maybe living room, I'm not sure. And it's always attracted me. I mean, from the time I was a teenager, I loved this image. I just thought, who is this fun-loving woman? What's going on here? And number of years ago, I decided I wanted to restage it. And then in doing so, I started to research it. I was like, well, who is she? We know who Andre Cartege is, but who is this person and what happened to her? And in the little bit I could find out, she was a very successful cabaret performer, with her own fame. And so I decided I wanted to restage the image, and I did it literally. And I have to tell you, that collar was very important to me, because it's this big funnel collar. And I thought, how am I going to make that? And as I do often, I went all over the house looking at medicine caps and things you put in the recycling and containers. What can I make? What can I make? And I found a nose spray. So I cut that down because it was the great funnel, and then attached that to her little dress, painted it silver. But anyway, restaging that. And then after that, and then I put the original Cartege on the wall. So after doing that, I started thinking, well, how did her life turn out? What happened after that? Did she stay wild and crazy? Did she, did she settle down? Did she have kids? Did she have regrets? Was she happy? Was she exhausted? And so I decided to restage it in this way. And this sort of was the impetus for the whole series. Now, that was a number of years ago, and I did a couple of different series after that didn't relate. But I came back to it now with my reading and decided to do more of this. So that's kind of how this series got kicked off. So.
Great. Well, that was wonderful. My name's Rachel. I recognize many of you. I am your teacher, but I am also an oil painter. I'm a still life painter. And this is some of my work. On this wall, what you're seeing is what I call my Black Swan series. So this series of paintings, it's not complete here. There are a couple of additional paintings in this body of work, but what you are seeing is a fairly uncomfortable pairing that I like to generate. The photographic image that is hiding beneath or behind each still life is emblematic of a difficult reality. It might be historical, but it also might be contemporary. These are what are economically termed black swan events. These are the types of happenings that come at great shock. They affect a huge amount of people, generally quite negatively. And then after they've occurred, because for our own, sense of survival, we kind of have to rationalize them away, because to accept that we are actually not in control of as much as we wish we were is really frightening. So I try and choose images that I personally am either affected by or traumatized by, and then decorate them. I like to pose them, frame them with objects and items that have art historical significance, personal significance, allegorical significance, and in doing so, generate a little bit of dissonance for the viewer. At least I hope that is happening. The paintings on the other wall are the paintings that I make in between these to decompress, because generally what's involved in these paintings is a lot of research, a lot of rumination, a lot of negativity, a lot of processing. And I also make sure to value and instill my practice with a fair amount of humor and levity. And so for that reason, those paintings especially usually revolve around a pun or a metaphor that made me giggle, and therefore I wanted to spend a little bit time in that space. The objects that you see on these pedestals are kind of my muses. They are my babies. I have a fairly enormous collection of them. I go to flea markets, estate sales, antique fairs, and I source them. They are in many ways reflective of and emblematic of the dead game animals that you will oftentimes see in Baroque still lifes, Golden Age, Dutch, Northern European still life painting. If you've taken my classes, you're familiar. And because dead game animals are no longer really part of our collective contemporary awareness, that would be a little bit strange. Instead, I turn to items of nostalgia, items of, in many ways, another era, another lifetime ago. My generation, the generations younger than me, we don't have these things in our homes. These things are not useful. They do not have a purpose in the way your laptop has a purpose, in the way your blender has a purpose. And for that reason, they're kind of defunct. And so I use them in my compositions as kind of stand-ins for objects that have died, objects that are dead, that are no longer useful to us in 2023. The animals that I do choose, of course these are not animals, they are representations of animals, but the animals that I do end up pairing with Certain images are obviously on purpose. And in that sense, each painting is a little bit of a puzzle. I like to encourage the viewer to spend a little bit of time thinking about why I might have made the choices that I did. I know we're a little bit short on time potentially, but I thought I would just take a few minutes to unpack that painting there on the left with the house fire. That image is called Kincaid. I made it at the towards the end of the 2019 California fire season. I'm from California, most of my family and friends live there, and that particular fire season, specifically the Kincaid wildfire, basically turned the Bay Area, where I'm from, into an apocalyptic hellscape. And it was really quite frightening. It also didn't help that that particular month it was like 90 degrees on average. No one could open their windows. Nobody had air conditioning. It was just logistically day to day really deeply unnerving and uncomfortable. And what really struck me particularly about the Kincaid fire, which was the largest of the wildfires that season, was that they had evacuated in Sonoma County, I believe, over 200,000 individual people very quickly. Nobody lost their lives, which was a minor miracle. However, Sonoma County is a very wealthy area of California. It's a lot of gorgeous farmland, wineries. And so what weren't evacuated were all the horses, all the dogs, all the farm animals. And I couldn't really let go of that. It was like it stuck. It stuck and it wouldn't go away. And so I kind of needed to purge it from me by making this painting. The image I sourced from a photographer named Noah Berger. I usually get questions about where I find these photographic. I think of them as photographic objects, even though they are flat. So I will make sure that the images that I'm sourcing, because I'm not taking them myself, either have a Creative Commons license or I have written express permission from the photographer. It's very, very important that you're making sure to cite your sources, people, even if you work with images. And Noah was kind enough to give me his permission. He's actually what do you call it? The people who like go into the fires, like a
First responder is a
He's not a first responder. He just goes to the fires. He's a fire chaser. That's what it is. He's a fire chaser. Wild. Cannot relate. But all of the images that you were seeing, or at least most of them from the fire season, were taken by him because he was really the only one who was willing to go take them. And so then he would sell his work to all of the different media publications and sources. So I got his permission to use his photograph and then framed it in kitsch, in decor, in banality, in color, in innocence. And in that way, hope to generate a little bit of cognitive dissonance. The citrus fruits that you've probably noticed are part of my repertoire, part of my practice. If you have taken our history class, you will know that citrus fruits oftentimes make an appearance in especially Dutch Baroque still life because they were so expensive. Remember that citrus fruits did not grow in the frigid northern climes of Europe, and so they had to be imported. Like, adjusted for inflation, they would have been hundreds of dollars to procure, not to eat, but to hand to an artist to immortalize in paint, right? Pineapples were like $4,000. It was wild. And so despite the fact that citrus fruit today is one of the most affordable things you can get at the grocery store, they still have that metaphorical, uncomfortable privilege to them. They have an air of ego, of vanity, of financial overconsumption. And so I like to include them in my compositions as a reminder, as a cautionary tale in some ways, because of course we are living in environments, in spaces, in moments that we are very much culpable in the reality that we are living inside of. And these things don't just happen to us, but we in large part work to generate them. And that is something that I think about a lot. And then of course make those paintings over there to cleanse the palette. But that's a little bit about me and my process, and I'm welcome to answer any questions you might have about one of these paintings, anything inside of each one of these paintings, but I'm a little bit obsessive, as Grace is, and I think our studios are probably not that dissimilar looking.
True.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I noticed you use fake flowers a lot for all of them.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
There is a reason for that. So in the Dutch Golden Age, much of the visual canon that we are aware of today was made by men. And what I found to be particularly fascinating and personally helpful is to realize that flower paintings specifically, because of their content, were oftentimes actually rendered by women artists. And that the flowers, because of what they represented, because of what they connoted, because of what they implied, were appropriate subject matter, whatever that means. Whatever that means. They were deemed appropriate for women to study. And so that's something that I am very much aware of and interested by and have some beef with, so to speak. And so I do enjoy inserting flowers where I can. I use fake ones for a couple of reasons. The first is that practically, they don't get moldy, they don't wilt, they don't dry out, and so I can spend, whatever the 3-4 months it is to make this painting without have to deal with anything changing or moving too much. I also like to use fake flowers as a little bit of a critique of what I had mentioned earlier, that there is something a little bit more contemporary, a little bit more wasteful, a little bit more strange about the fact that you can even purchase fake flowers. What's that about?
I just love that you put into the painting the fact that they are fake. It made sure to make the little joints and
Yeah.
the fake leaves. I just enjoyed that.
Oh, I'm so glad you noticed.
Because it would be so easy just to make it look like a live thing.
Yes, what I actually find in my process is that I have a really crap imagination. I'm really, really bad at drawing, at painting from my imagination. I am a descriptive image maker. I need to use a reference.
I
Yeah.
see that the way you got the lighting just perfect on porcelain.
Yeah, so in that way, it's not easier for me to make it up. But I really appreciate that you noticed that.
I liked it. I very
Thanks.
much appreciated it.
I want to say something about women were also not allowed to be in life drawing classes. So they didn't get to learn anatomy except for, painting their children or loved ones near them. And so it was another reason. And then of course, because they weren't painting battle scenes and other art that was respected at the time, it was dismissed as not great art, So they weren't allowed to learn what was going to be great art, and then their work was dismissed as not great because they couldn't learn how to do that. So, kind of a little double bind there.
Yep. Also going to plug my figure drawing class next term. Sign up for that because we're going to learn all about human anatomy. Yeah, Ezra, what's up?
I find it really neat that you've made some of this artwork. Like, I remember when I had 2 classes with you last year, I don't remember seeing any of it at all.
Okay, yes, so this is true. I have a double life. I have a little bit of a double life in that I come here and I teach you guys what I know, and to the best of my ability, and then I go home and I make my own images.
Neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know Grace pretty well, so I'm not going to ask her any questions.
Oh, come on.
He knows everything about me.
I know how she makes her work. And like myself,
It's a really good question, and it's something that I've wrestled with quite a bit. The short answer is no, it doesn't bother me at all. There is an awareness that the more art historical context the viewer has when stepping in front of this image, potentially the more they're going to be able to pull out of it. But I think that's true of any image. I hope, and I think I'm more aware of this now than I was even 3, 4, 5 years ago making these paintings, but I am attempting that to generate a feeling that even if you don't know exactly why I've made the decisions I did, and yes, this is so pretty, what is that? Mm-hmm. And that there is a little bit of a disturbing turn that happens, even if the viewer might not have a huge amount of clarity. I put a lot of emphasis on the title as well. I try and choose a title that is very straightforward and to the point and actually Googleable if that is something that you are interested in, if it's bothering you that you're not quite sure. I talk to my students a fair amount about the fact that descriptive drawings inspire questions, they don't always have the answers. And that can make us feel a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. So I try to generate something that has enough visible content to be engaging. But yes, it is true that I could be up here for hours explaining every single move that I made, and that's gonna be lost on 99.9% of people. And that's kind of okay with me. I think most artists have a little bit of that inside of them, just because so much of the labor is invisible and so much of the labor is happening in the studio space, and I can't bring my studio in here. I mean, there's certainly artists who have tried to do something similar, but yeah, the short answer is no, it doesn't bother me, but it has bothered other people in the past.
Can I just call this out?
Yeah.
So your works both make, like for art students, they both of these groups of work tell you, if you're an art student, that you need to take Art 204. Because I teach those, I'm the art historian, right? I look at these and I can read almost everything in them. There's so much. So you'll learn about Dutch Baroque in Art 205, which is next term. You'll also learn about, Michelangelo, right? Botticelli. You'll learn all this stuff. You get Magritte in Art 206, which is spring term. So, and everything she's talked about here, like all this stuff, like you'll get Maria von Osterwick, which is who you're referring to with the flowers. So take an art history class. All right, that's fun. Thank you.
Do it.
Grace, could you spend a little more time talking about how you create your images before you photograph them? I was fascinated, that you're looking for things to mimic the clothing. Do you make most of the clothing? Where do the dolls come from?
I make, I find, I alter or make from scratch, kind of in that order. So, and the more my concept is clear, the more I've had to make things. So I am starting to make clothes. In fact, a good friend of mine happens to be the costume director at Leica. And so just chatting with her, just getting, she's very generous with little tips. She'll say like, oh, you need to don't use those needles. You need a little wire needle that will bend. I never thought of that, and it made it so much easier to do hand sewing. Or, if I'm working on a machine, the feed will start to pull because I'm working with such tiny things, the feed will pull the clothes down in the machine. So she said, oh, just put tissue paper underneath it. Ding, things that you just don't learn in a sewing class. So I have started to make things. Fortunately, it's not for animation and it's not for anything finished. So if it's flawed and not showing, doesn't matter, as long as it works in the photo. So yeah, I'm making clothes. I work with Fimo. I made the papaya and the seeds. This was a coat I found on Etsy or whatever, but it's for a male, so it's really huge. So it's all clipped in the back until I could get it to, get closer to the fit on her. What else? This crazy thing for the Michelangelo piece, I actually brought some stuff, so I'm going to show you. Now the shroud, I've done it, with each of these pieces. I end up doing research on the painting. So the
Design
shroud.
students. Doesn't we just talk about this painting?
In the research, it's people theorize that Michelangelo, it's representing the human brain, and that the green ribbon, the green cord ribbon that was in the painting is the cord, the spinal cord, or whatever cord. Anyway, so because what a weird shape, right? I was like, what is that? Why is that like that? And so I made it, but you see how it's just taped together. It's spit and glue, you know? It's not supposed to last. And then I'm like, well, how am I going to get the ribbon to be in the right place? So I tried all these different ribbons, and finally found one where I could put starch on it and then support it with wire. But and then in the original, there's 12 figures in with God, and so I had to fit 12 little babies in here, and they all fall over and they all fall out, and all the, and I'm trying to position them, and so it's really a crazy, obsessive process that I totally dig, Yeah, so things like that. Let's see if there's anything else. The Leda and the Swan. So I just lucked upon, I was in New York and I went into this toy store and I lucked upon these body parts, they're this big, these people, but they're all broken up, so it was just arms and legs and torsos and hair and heads. So it was great because I could kind of stick them together with wax and get them into a position I wanted. Again, I think I said it, well, maybe I didn't say it here, but I'm not Photoshoppy. I really enjoy hands-on, making things happen with the illusion of light and optics. And then when I have to clean up some things in Photoshop, I do that. But I don't composite. I really enjoy this process. I forget what your question was now.
Totally answered my question. I just want to know more about your process. It's fascinating, and
Yeah, I collect a lot of, I come upon things.
Bring out more. It's a magical little box.
Well, yeah, it's like,
so photographer might be a misnomer.
so this, so I didn't have I couldn't find the right kind of basket. So I just take what I can find, and it's a wreck, I cut it up with tin snips and glued it together, but as long as those pieces didn't show, it worked. And then I use this stuff called Stiffen that you can spray on certain fabrics. Not all fabrics will take it, but then you can spray them and mold them because they don't have the weight to hang properly. So, you spray them with stuff and then you use a hairdryer and try to mold them into place. So, yeah, so that's our, and then I didn't bring his head, but.
It's not in the laundry basket?
What's that?
It's not in the laundry
No,
basket?
he's in front of it. Where is that? Oh, it's right here. There he is. And that was a Ken, and I had to make his beard, and that was really fun. I kind of, styled it very, very kind of 70s hip beard, hipster beard. So I think, but both of us, it takes a long, long, long time to do these things.
It's the invisible labor part.
It is, yeah. Someone the other day, they said, oh, with pricing work, how do you do it? Is it by the hour? I was like, I would, I'd be in.
No.
Because I'd be one of those billionaires.
Yeah, Larry.
I'm curious what led the two of you to combine these bodies of work into Rule of Gallery. They work really well together, but they're so drastically different at the same time. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To speak to that, each spring we have a community conversation in the department about the next year's lineup in the gallery, and I was familiar with Rachel's work and Grace's work, and they both were interested in showing together, and we went with that because we felt like both bodies of work have a lot to offer our student body and the campus community.
Grace, can I ask, I missed the first part of your talk, so I apologize if you went over this already, but I'm always so amazed at how many pieces you have and how you just keep coming up with more and how it relates to art history. It kind of builds on the art history plug. And I'm wondering, do you have like 100 of these in your head that you want to do, or is it one at a time you get inspired by an image? Like, how does that first moment of inspiration happen for you?
Well, I used to work a lot more freeform. I have a sketchbook, and there's, hundreds of things in there that I've never done. But it used to just be odd things out of my head that I would think of, or ideas that weren't completely formed. But in more recent years, I've been doing series, and it's really helped me with direction. So I finished one, and I already know like the next one I want to do. But it's only like, it's like one, I'm always like just one image ahead in my head. And then I like to do a New Year's card every year, so I do that too, and that's like a side thing. And so, especially in recent times, because I have more time on my hands, I'm able to work more consistently. But it's still, it take a long time. This is a series I want to continue. I know what I want to work on next. Yeah.
One of your pieces right over there with all those dolls that are lined together kind of reminds me of one of those Michelangelo portraits.
Are you talking about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the creation of man. This is Michelangelo's creation of man. And, I think you can tell, my goddess is giving him condoms. So, yeah, it's called divine intervention. So it's a little twist on who gets to dominate.